It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Dean Peter Nicholas DDS, better known as Dr. Dino. He's a general dentist in Lombard, Illinois, practicing in the western suburbs of Chicago. His practice is known as Dr. Dino's Dental Oasis. He's a 1986 graduate of Loyola University School of Dentistry with a DDS. His patients age in range from 2 to 103, where he treats children of all ages. Dr. Dino provides small-town comforts at a high-tech environment. He's also been known to pick up his local patients that no longer drive and do not have a way to get to the office. He practices general dentistry with an emphasis on removable and fixed prosthetics. He was a preclinical instructor at Midwestern University College of Dental Medicine from 12 to 17 when he had to resign because of his commitment to organized dentistry. He's been involved in all aspects of organized dentistry since he started practicing in '86, ranging from the ADA Council on Dental Benefits and currently serving as a member of the ADA Audit Committee. He was president of the Hellenic American Dental Society, which is Greek, West Suburb Dental Society, Independent Dental Organization. In 2007, was the president of the Illinois State Dental Society. Currently, he is serving as the president of the Chicago Dental Society, which has over 4,000 members and is the largest single component in the country. No single dentist has held both the offices of president of the Illinois State Dental Society and Chicago Dental Society in over 80 years. And his commitment to organized dentistry is for the betterment of the profession, its members, and their patients. He's been married for 30 years to his first and only wife, Celeste, and worked together for 29 of those years. He has two Maltese fur baby brothers, Mickey and Buddy, who come to the office and can often be seen helping to relax the patient. He loves baseball, baseball cards, and G-scale trains, and loves watching game shows on Netflix with his wife and fur babies, spending quality quarantine time together. And I just want to say to the kids, if you're a quarter of our listeners, Dino, they're still in dental school, is that Chicago is ground zero for dentistry. It's not just the ADA, it's the headquarters of Delta Dental, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Anybody who's a serious actor in dentistry has locations in Chicago and then in Washington, D.C. In fact, Dino, you need to be the next executive director. Mike, how obvious is that? I mean, that's got written all over it.
It's a lot of work. It was for Kathy O'Loughlin last year with the pandemic and everything. She really spent a lot of time. They put out that toolkit for everybody. I think it was just a great job. They did a magnificent job in helping guide us through what was a very turbulent year last year.
Well, what else would you expect from an Irish dentist?
There you go.
I mean, that's just status quo for us Irish. But my gosh, I
First
can't.
of all, before we start, I want to just thank you for having me. This is an extreme honor. I've met you before. I've seen you at Midwinter, but to actually do this and to sit down with you is a treat. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, the honor is all mine. My gosh. But I just have to tell you, I think your timing is off. If I was going to be the president of the Chicago Dental Society, I wouldn't have done it during a pandemic. I would have gone maybe the year before, or a couple of years after. Was this the worst timing you've ever had on your life on anything?
You know, people are telling me that, but you have to believe in the everything happens for a reason. I was chosen because of my passion and my love of the profession. I got the calling when I was 10. I've heard you talk to other people, and I was 10 years old. My mother said I wanted to do this. By the time I was in high school, I was Dino the dentist. Ironically, I've heard you talk about the Polish profession. There's a Polish dental society. I'm in the Hellenic Dental Society. The Arcolians have an Italian dental society. So I'm trying to get the three groups together. We're going to meet at a Chinese restaurant. So it's on neutral territory. The interesting observation I made when I was in high school was that at church on Sunday, it looked like the lifeboats of the Titanic. It was just women, children, and a few people. My dad was a chemist. He worked at Sherwin-Williams. He had his master's in chemistry. His best friend was a lawyer. Another friend of his, Johnny Manta's dad, was a painting contractor, and that's it. The rest of my friends' fathers all had restaurants, dry cleaners, Dunkin' Donuts. So I never saw them on Sundays. If your dad had a Sonic, you weren't working. You were working on Sunday. You weren't there. So I knew early. And then when the dentist came in, Dr. Niarchos, he walked in with his wife. He had a Cadillac. She had a fur coat. And the way everybody responded to him, I knew when I was 10, I'm like, this is what I want to do.
So was it Was it kind of sad when your dental school, Loyola, which you graduated from in '86, closed in '93? Was that kind of like a funeral for you, or
Yeah,
tell us?
it was a sad thing. I had gone to undergrad at Loyola as well. So it was a little disappointing. By the time I was a junior or senior, they had talked about there was some rumblings that the hospital was going to take over and just keep the specialties. So when they finally did close, yeah, it was a little disappointing. It's tough not having an alma mater. So absolutely, but I
Yeah,
forget the time I spent there. It was a great time. It was a great time to be there.
you and I graduated the same time, '86, '87, and that was when a bunch of schools were closing. We lost Loyola, Georgetown, Emory, Farley Dickerson. Was it Northwestern? I think seven shut down, and then it
Right.
went flat, and now they're coming back. I think now they've opened up about seven more. Midwestern in Chicago, and they have a branch out here in Glendale. What do you think of that ebb and flow of dental schools contracting and then expanding? Is that just recycling, creative
It could be.
destructionism?
I'm sorry. It could be a resurgence. As you said, you and I are from the same generation. So when I went back to teach, I had been out for a number of years, and it was interesting to see the shift. When I was in school, I think I had about 140 in my class, 30 of which were women, 28 of who were hygienists. So they breezed through, oral morphology and perio. When I started teaching, it was almost 50-50. In fact, 55% women, 45% guys. Culturally from everywhere, not only in the US, but in the world. Okay. And then the average age of the dental freshman was 26 and a half, not 22 like it was for us. So 26 and a half means you've got some 23s and 24s, but then you've got some 30s and 35. So these are people that had been out 8-10 years. They've had other professions. They did other things and decided, you know what? I think I want to do dentistry.
So, my gosh, this year is crazy. You just were Dr. Dean Nicholas installed as 2020 President-elect Chicago Dental Society, and my gosh, you're coming up on your the 155th Midwinter meeting taking place February 20 to 22. Is that going to be in the flesh or virtual?
That's going to be virtual. This is number 156. I am president for this calendar year now, 21. But the commitment started in 17 when I was treasurer. So it's a 5-year deal. So I would have taken this at any time. This is such an extreme honor and a privilege to do this. We made the decision, Howard, in mid-August as a board to do the meeting virtually. We weighed the options of maybe a hybrid, maybe not at all. But then we decided what was best for our membership and for the attendees was to at least provide the CE, because in Illinois and I think 17 other states, this is a CE year for us. So we decided, hey, let's put out the best show. We've already scouted the speakers. Ted Boris got them together. We lined everybody up, and this is what we're going to do from February 25th through the 27th. And then we're also, from March 1st through the 15th, those classes will be available on demand as well.
My gosh, and for the kids, for a little bit of history, um, this Chicago Dental Society is the largest local society of the American Dental Association, established in 1864. With more than 4,400 members. And, I think about that a lot. The president of the ADA this year is from our home state of Arizona. And my gosh, but what I think is interesting is the first president of the ADA was a DDS. It was William Henry Atkinson, DDS MD, who lived 1815 to 1891, the first president of the ADA. Who served 2 years, 1860. But it started off as an MD and a DDS. And our current ADA president, Dan, is an oral surgeon. He's an MD and a DDS. And I always wonder, smart guys like you have thought about this for so many years. Do you think it was wrong that dentistry and medicine kind of separated in the 1860s? One needed a bed in a hospital and the other needed a chair. And do you think they should have stayed together like they do in Poland and Russia? When you go to Russia, a stomatologist is just the 4 years undergrad is the same. The first 2 years of med school is the same. And maybe Dino wants to be a dermatologist and I go be a stomatologist. Do you think that was a better plan than the way the Americans did it?
I think based on what the knowledge was back then, it was a natural progression. What's interesting now, having been at the school, is that split has now brought them back together. They are now learning more about systemic disease, diabetes, heart disease. It's not separate like it was when you and I were in school. They kept stacking on the components. You'd go to anatomy and it would be, first we're going to learn about the bones, then about the nerves, then about the arteries. Where now they're learning about the human body. They're learning everything. And then they're throwing in the dental component.
So, do you think, I've had both vaccine doses. I've had the first and the second one. All the dentists want to know, for our guests, Dino, would you take the vaccine yourself, or would you try it out first on Mickey and Buddy, see if they survived?
I'm going tomorrow for injection number 2. So I'm all over that. When we were in school, I don't know if it was the same for you, Howard, but the hepatitis vaccine was mandatory, where you received a shot and then a month later was the second one, and then 6 months from the first was the third shot, and then somewhere along the line, after about a year or so, you went for a titer just to check to make sure you had the antibodies. And I'm not talking about distributing the shot in the office. I'm saying, if you're actively practicing dentistry, my personal opinion is that you should get the shot. You're 1A. You're in the aerosol field. I think you need to get the vaccine. Absolutely.
But when I started this off, I was saying that to start off we were MDs, DDS, and the current one is. But and then you're talking about the hepatitis vaccine. But I'm a little let down on my homie's endorsement of the Gardasil 9 vaccine. I mean, oral cancer is our only cancer, and we're dentists want to believe they're physicians of the oral mouth. And most states, I've been saying for 30 years that grandma comes in and you can't even give her a flu shot. That's the number one reason that she could die before the next cleaning, and they let pharmacy techs at Walgreens give a flu shot. And I was so excited when Tennessee became the first state where a dentist could give a flu shot. But I'm looking at that oral cancer and that Gardasil vaccine from Merck. My gosh, Australia, so many countries are so into this, but I can't name one dentist I know that even talks about the vaccine for HPV. The Super Bowl is this weekend, and Jim Kelly from the Buffalo Bills had oral cancer that could have been prevented if he had a vaccine. But do you think with this coronavirus pandemic and everybody talking about vaccines, that as soon as this pandemic is over, dentists should start talking about the Gardasil vaccine and flu shots and be part of the system?
Yeah, I think it's all gonna come full circle. Once we get through the first crisis, I think all the other things that could or should or may have happened will start to come up, and those will all be topics of conversation for us on distributing them to the office, at the office, for your staff, or at a public health facility. So you're absolutely right. Just like when you and I were in school, they gave us the lecture on fluoride. It started in Grand Rapids and slowly filtered its way to the West Coast, where only 60 or 65% by the time you get to where you are, or even California, not all the water was fluoridated.
Yeah, when I got to Arizona, Phoenix was not fluoridated, and I started the Arizona Citizens for Better Dental Health with Jack Dillenberg, who went on to become the dean of AT Still. And I was so young and dumb, I thought, well, I'm just going to cancel Friday, so we do this. It'll probably only there's only 8 city councilmen. How long is this going to take me? A couple weeks? It took me every Friday for 2 years, and I had student loans, I had a growing practice, but it was really amazing, and it really prepared me for a lot of stuff that I see now. And back then in 87, when you say, well, the CDC says this, and clear back in 87, Arizona, they're saying, oh, the CDC, they're just a shill for the pharmaceutical industry. And so I realized back then that 1/4 of Americans had zero trust in any institutions around. And so now when it expired, and we had to do it again a couple of years ago for another 20 years. It's the same thing. People are just people, and I get it. I mean, I can't read 5,000 years of human history and learn the lesson that you should really trust your government. I think if you read any student of history, would be I get it. But you're such a great mentor, and you have so many people listening to you right now that are in dental kindergarten, or they got out last year. They had no idea they were going to come out in the middle of the pandemic. They got a lot of student loans. The jobs have really dried up. In fact, I got some data on that. On Dentaltown, one of the most robust sections is classified ads. There's always about 5,000 classified ads. Well, usually it was about probably 4,000 jobs available, and now it's 1,000, and it's only the DSOs. All the private practice associate jobs just disappeared. And then instead of having 1,000 practices for sale, now there's 2,000 practices for sale. So many people that were our age, if they didn't get divorced, and I always remind you on financial planning, don't listen to a financial planner, because they never talk about the only two things. If you don't get married, you won't get divorced. Divorce costs dentists 10 times more than student loans. My student loans was $87,000. My divorce was 41 times higher, 3.8 million. So if you're worried about student loans, you're just young. And kids, I was one of 7 kids, and I only had 4. And if you're $400,000 in student loans, that's the price of 2 kids from birth to 18, not counting college. So if you're going to have 4 kids, have 2. Or if you're a genius, just have 2 Maltese fur babies and name them Mickey and Buddy. So that's that in a lifetime. But what advice would you give these people? They're coming out, they're not finding jobs. A lot of them wonder, well, if I can't find a job, should I buy a dental office? Others are like, it just sounds dumb to buy a dental office in the middle of a pandemic. What advice would you give these kids?
The first thing, Howard, I would tell them is that you need to find out in your heart, how do I want to practice dentistry? Do I want to work 3 days a week? Do I want to work with somebody? Do I want to have my own place? And then what kind of work do I want to provide? Do I want to focus on restorative? Am I a denture partial guy or girl? How do I want to provide the service that I've learned? I would hate for somebody just to jump from school into a DSO and then all of a sudden start doing work or things that they're not comfortable doing or that they really don't want to do. So the first thing you need to do is find out, how do you want to practice? Do you not want to do endo and oral surgery? Depending on where you're at, if you're in a city, but if you're in a more rural area, do you want to be a general dentist who does everything? So you need to find out first what you want to do and where you want to do it. The difference is you and I learned different dentistry. We learned how to do everything. We could do 90 to 95% of everything we were taught in school. Right now, you might need to work with somebody for a year or two, kind of like a GPR, to get some experience. Maybe I watched somebody do molar endo in school. I didn't do it. So you need to work with somebody to find out, if this is what you want to do. Maybe it's a specialty. You may not get that experience in dental school. I also was the classic example of, Dr. New Grad, Dr. Old Grad. When I got into school, I had found somebody who was almost 70 years old. He was selling his practice. But he also taught me a lot of things. He was very stubborn and set in his ways, but he was also very good at, if somebody came in on a Friday night and busted off number 7 and 6 and 8 were crowns, if he had some acrylic, a paper clip, and some chewing gum, he could get that tooth back in there to at least get him through the weekend when there was no lab available. And I think that's what some of the students and the recent grads are missing is, emergency work. Can you do something by yourself? That's a whole different science. And you're not going to get that in school. You're going to learn certain procedures in school, but there's a lot of things that you're going to learn your first year out that will help you through the rest of your career.
I love anthropology, history, and I think it's very interesting how the anthropologists, when they studied all the major religions, Judaism, 2000 BC, Hinduism, 1500 BC, Buddhism, 500 BC, that the only thing that was in common, there wasn't a name of a person, a city, a place, nothing. The only thing that was in common in all major works was the golden rule. Start in Judaism, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow man. That is the entire law. All the rest is commentary. Hinduism, this is the sum of all true righteousness. Deal with others as that was shall be dealt by. And in the Mahabharata. And the bottom line is when you go get a job and you're doing dentistry in a way that you wouldn't do to yourself or your mom or your child, dude, it's very clear. You just don't do that. End of story. And these DSOs, dentists jump from job to job to job for about 5 years before they settle down. So you got 6,000 graduates a year for 5 years. They only got 30,000 dentists to play with. So when they're telling you that Heartland and Aspen and Pacific are going to be the next Walgreens and CVS of dentistry, and in 20 years we're all going to be working in McDentals, I'm sorry. Pharmacists, when you go to France, my mind was blown. When the doctor gives you a prescription, he loads it into a smart card, and then you take it to an ATM machine. You put in the card, a bottle comes down, the pills come out of a hopper. You can automate 28 tabs of PenVK, but I'm a dentist telling you you have 4 cavities. You have to trust me. I have to touch you, lean you back, give you a shot. It's so complex that this is, if all the dentists just focus on the golden rule and just refuse to treat people in ways they would not want to be treated, regardless of what your Wall Street owner says or the dental insurance company. I worry about my 6 grandkids. If my 6 grandkids go to a dentist and it's owned by Wall Street or Blue Cross and Blue Shield, well, where are my grandkids going to go when they need a dentist? So it gets complex. But now that you and I are getting the vaccine, 2020 just was what it is. It was, we were closed 2 months. 2 out of 12 is 16%. Are you starting to feel optimistic about 2021? Do you see light at the end of the tunnel? Is it going to get better, or do you really think, Dino, that it's going to be another slug out year?
I think it's going to be tough, but I think it's going to be better. I think now that we've realized what's happening, I think we've got a better handle on things. I think the vaccine is going to help. The masking issue will be there, I think, for some time. We've also noticed that for midwinter this year, all the classes are 90 minutes. Whereas when you and I started and we got out, it was 6 hours of Gordy Christensen. It was 3 hours of somebody in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon. So now what the students and the recent grads is, give me 90 minutes on adhesive. I need 90 minutes. How do I cut off a PFM? Maybe I've never done that. How do I go up the buckle, cut this thing off, put the pry bar in there and pop this crown up? I've never done that. Okay. We saw the Harold Chevelles, the MODBL FUCK amalgams, right? So you can edit that one out. But
that was so great. You got to repeat that one. The MODBL what?
Yeah, I can't remember. And
oh my God, that was great.
A lot of numbers, a lot of letters in there, but those days are gone now. We have to focus on what do the students want? What do the graduates want? Okay. You want 90 minutes, it's the same with a 3-hour class. If I watch that class, or what's going to be sad about midwinter is no hands-on, which everybody really loves. But, you take out one pearl of wisdom. If you watch a class for an hour and a half and you say, listen, I'm going to go back to my office and I'm going to try this procedure a certain way, or I'm going to look at this particular product or an instrument, then you've gotten through. And that's really the purpose of this. I learn more in an hour and a half than I do sitting there for 6 hours listening to somebody speak about the same topic morning and afternoon.
Well, Dino, this pandemic with public education and schools being closed and all that just confirmed everything I've always been saying, because I had 4 boys that went through grammar school, middle school, high school, all on one street that, for all those years. And I always said school is daycare, because when you look at the research on transferring knowledge to an individual, they say these kids, their brain doesn't even wake up and they're not even ready till like 10, and then they can only take incoming information for like 7.5 to 15 minutes. And then how do they start the school? 8 o'clock, and just jawbone all the way till 3:30, just a complete waste of time. And sometimes you need a pandemic to turn the world upside down. And I think that you reducing the midwinter class times to 90 minutes is what we do. Like when we release an online continuing education course, like today we released Fluorescence Enhanced Theragnosis by Dr. Liviu Stier. My gosh, when we get these lectures, they're usually like 4 or 5 hours, and then you'll edit it down to like 45 minutes. You're saying, well, we need an hour. And they're like, dude, I gave you five hours. And it's like, yeah, but the fishing trips and the boat trips and the wife and kids and all this stuff. I think that is genius that you're doing it faster, easier, higher quality, better, smaller. I mean, and it took a pandemic to do this. So when do you think?
So you're right. Having said that, let me cut you off again. I always, from now on, I think that to some degree, the virtual component will always be there. You can bring the meeting back, but even at 10%, some people, so you can reach all of the country or even the people overseas, there will be a virtual component so that if somebody is giving a lecture, then maybe a week or so after the meeting, you'll be able to type in and to receive that. Absolutely. You're right.
And I also, I want to apologize to you, and I don't want to apologize. We always charge the dentist $36 for a course, but we only charge them in the rich countries. We don't charge in the developing world. And I've lectured in 50 countries, and I had a dental school dean when she realized it was me, just broke down and bawled. She said, "Thank you so much." I've been in Tanzania, Somalia, Kathmandu, where people were just telling me it's everything. And I think that's one thing the internet can do is transfer really expensive knowledge from the 20 richest countries in the world over to the 180 that are climbing up. And I hope, and you can do that. The technology's there. In fact, one of the standard technologies now is you can put something online and there's programs so you can block out the 5 states if you don't want it to go to those 5 states or 5 countries. But that was a long time ago. Someone showed me that. It might be better than that. One of the things that dentists always complain about, and they've complained about it for 30 years, is, well, they never taught me that in dental school. And I'm like, well, I had 4 kids. They didn't teach me how to make a kid in dental school. I never got the dad talk from my dad. He's passed away. He never gave me the talk on that stuff. I mean, God, dental school doesn't teach you how to cook, exercise, eat clean. I mean, but it's just the go-to excuse. Well, they never taught us that in dental school. I actually can't imagine taking 100 kids at a college, taking the binky out of their mouth, putting them in a dental school, and then 4 years later turning them loose to do root canals and extractions. I think it's amazing. And what they have to learn is that learning is a lifelong process. Dental school's no different than undergrad or high school or grammar school. But what do you think, what letter grade do you give to the dental schools? And what do you, I know you're going to tell me they should have taught something in dental school because you're a dentist, and I've never heard a dentist ever that didn't complain about something not being taught in dental school. But what do you think of the dental school education, and what do you think they should teach more of?
I think now it's more rounded than it was when we were in school. The focus for us was teeth, the mouth, the jaws. It kind of overlapped into medicine, whereas now they've really intertwined, diabetes and nutrition and ergonomics. We had somebody that came in for an hour and taught us how to sit in a chair when they have an entire class on ergonomics and how to sit and pass instruments and work, with two people or 2 assistants and things like that. So I think the more well-rounded education is given now. I think like back then, okay, we received minimal practice management. How do you handle a staff? How do you get a staff? Do I keep the staff from Dr. Oldgrad? Do I get my own staff? How do I train them? So that's a big deal. The biggest questions I got asked in school, Howard, when I was teaching was, what happens on the outside? Am I going to do a restoration like this? Isn't this a crown? What happens? Do I take out half the amalgam and put in composite? Do I take it all out? What happens when I get out of here? What do you tell your assistants? What are they supposed to say? Just like a hygienist. When I had first started, the hygienist would say, what's wrong? Don't you floss? So I went into the room. I said, come here for a second. I go, why don't you ask them, hey, what kind of floss are you using? That's the exact same question. The other thing is learning how to talk to patients. And I don't mean treatment acceptance. I mean, how do you talk to a person? Those teeth are connected to somebody's head. This is somebody who trusts you. They believe in you. You went to 8 years of college. You need to tell them, listen, this is what you need. There's always 5 options. A, nothing. Don't do anything. But I'm going to tell you what happens with nothing. B is fixed. C is removable. This is an implant. You go through all the stages. Don't worry about the money. And you talk to the patient like they're your own family. And I think that's the best advice you can give.
My gosh, my memory serves me right. We're coming up on March 2021. You guys had the Chicago Midwinter meeting in 2020, didn't you?
Yes.
It wasn't canceled, right?
Right. Last year I went to Yankee in January at the end of the month, and then we had our midwinter. And then about 2 weeks later, I think we were the last major meeting at McCormick Place, and then Ace Hardware and a bunch of other corporations shut down, and that was it. It stopped right after that.
Wow. And I was Canada, Vancouver was kind of about a week after that or something like that, and
yeah, you're right.
They decided to go on with it. It was a horrible call, all these unknowns, and then Hinman, I couldn't believe they had the guts to just close down the meeting. I mean, that's deep south. I figured those guys. I mean, I've been there so many times. I thought those guys would do it if in the middle of a tornado and a hurricane. But Hinman canceled. That was a brave decision.
That's why we decided in the middle of August, which you think to yourself, well, gee, that's early. But just like weddings and everything else, you start talking about booking 18,000 rooms, Howard, for 3 days. You've got McCormick Place, buses, speakers, money, hotels. When you figure out how much goes into that, it's not a decision you can make the week before. So myself and the board decided that, this is not the thing to do. It was probably the toughest decision I've ever had to make in organized dentistry, was not to do this. I'm thinking about 29,000 attendees. I'm thinking about the exhibitors, the people that come from overseas and the rest of the country. The interactions, hugging everybody. You know how you are. You see all your friends and your colleagues, and you're hugging each other and you commiserate. And getting back to what you said about the kids being in school, 7th grade, your net worth in 7th grade is determined by who you sit next to in the lunchroom. Okay. So when we were in dental school, we'd go in on Saturdays, have the radio on, we do wax ups and things like that. That's where you learn. That's where you bond with everybody. And that's what they're missing now. And I hate that. The students need to be with other students. As you know, from the internet, you can learn everything online, but you need that interaction with your classmates to make that education whole.
Yeah, we're social animals, and I mean, it's just they're social animals. They need interaction, and I remember when they closed down Alcatraz. I mean, they were proving that, putting them in these prisons with complete isolation, that they were having irreversible permanent brain damage. I mean, we're just not wired to do everything on a Zoom meeting. I've had so many people that were coming on this show. They go, I want to fly to Arizona. I'm doing this. I don't want to see another Zoom meeting. I mean, it's just you just hear their coming out. I want to go back to dental students, because I feel like, say, the only reason I have a dental office is because if I sold my dental office, well, then I'd have to put an operatory in my house and an air compressor, and it's just a lot easier just to keep a dental office. Not to mention, I don't know how to run an air compressor, an X-ray machine, and all that kind of stuff. But it's more just for fun right now. And the only value of knowledge is if it's transferable. And so, to have your lectures in Chicago Midwinter transferable to Asia, Africa, and South America would be great. But transferring to our kids within the country, and these kids, one of the reoccurring problems I always see with dentists, lawyers, and physicians is just how they just consistently live above their lifestyle. And when you look at two PhDs who wrote The Millionaire Next Door, blew everyone's mind that they are showing teachers had more at retirement than physicians, dentists, and lawyers, because they never lived above their means. And why do you think that is? And do you think these future kids could ever learn how to live like teachers and save money, as opposed to live like fancy lawyers and doctors and dentists and live above their means?
That's a terrific question. I think, based on not only the education they receive, but the fact that they're a little bit older when they go to school, I think makes them a lot smarter. They've seen their friends who aren't dentists, and they want to work 3 days a week. They don't necessarily want to own a practice. They're comfortable working for somebody else. So when you start getting into that, then you're not buying the big house, you're not buying big cars, you're not spending all your money frivolously. These students, the recent grads now, they want to travel, they want to enjoy their lives. They need enough money for insurance and their cell phones, and that's it. And that's fine too. That's the way the world is. When you and I got out of school, you look for a practice, you work maybe somewhere for a year. If the guy took you in and kept you as an associate, you could possibly buy into that practice, maybe buy the building like I did. And now I've got, 6 ops and 10,000 square feet here, and it's just me. So, I would love to have a bunch of students come here and work. That would be terrific. So the mindset is different now. Nobody wants, my friends, my colleagues that are our age who have kids in dental school, those kids don't want to work with their fathers. They want to work somewhere a couple of days, 2-3 days a week. They want to travel. They want to enjoy life. It's a different experience than it was when you and I got out of school.
Do you ever worry, or do you ever think about that with the increasing amounts of student loan debt, that it might incentivize younger dentists to be a little more aggressive in treating cases that they're not really ready to do? Do you think it's going to do that?
Yes, it has. But the good news is that the education they're receiving now, they're taking pictures, they're documenting, they're doing impressions, they're doing wax ups. I used to tell the students when I was there, 95% of the work that you're going to do on this case should happen before you pick up the handpiece. If you're going to do 6 across the front, or 8, or 6 on the top and 6 on the bottom, you have to look at ortho. You need to take impressions, pictures, explain, re-explain, have the parents come in, explain it to them, do everything you possibly can. It might be 2 or 3 months, but do not jump on the handpiece the moment a patient comes in and says, I need a crown. You need to discuss everything, because that single crown may domino into well, why didn't you offer Invisalign? How come they need a gingivectomy? So they are a lot smarter about case selection. And I could give a whole lecture like you could on cases not to do. Let me show you all my failures. You want to sit there, Howard, and have me show you all the crowns and all the things that worked out? That's great. Show me what didn't work out. Show me how come I worked on my cousin's sister's godmother and that thing was a disaster. Okay, that's what you want to hear. And that's the knowledge you and I have that we can share with students and recent grads. Hey, don't do this. Remember they told us in school that when the patient comes in with a bag full of dentures, you don't want to see him. You're not going to make the 11th set when they have 10 in the bag. So sometimes the best treatment for us and for the patient is no treatment, and say, listen, that's terrific, but I don't think I can help you right now. So case selection is everything.
Case selection is everything. So where do I want to go back to the 2021 Chicago Midwinter meeting. Will be virtual. Where do they go for information about that meeting?
That info you can find at cds.org. You can still register at this point. We have close to 150 exhibitors that will be showing their wares. They'll have tiles on the website, so you'll be able to find them. We are launching a mobile app, I believe in a week or 2 for the phone. So for the students and recent grads, you'll be able to track us down on the mobile app. So cds.org is the place to go. Also, you can text dental, DENTAL, to 69922, and register there. That'll hook you up with the CDS texting, not just for the midwinter, but for regional meetings that we have throughout the year, and for all information on vaccines and any other updates.
Wow, that's since you're in the same city as Delta Dental, can you go tell Delta to do that? I can't. I just podcasted before you, the president and CEO of the Delta Dental in Massachusetts, and I've ever since Steve Jobs came out with the smartphone, I'm like, why isn't there an insurance app? And they come in Blue Cross and Blue Shield, instead of having papers, instead of us having to have our employees call them. Why can't they just get high tech? And that is so cool that you're doing this high tech. I mean, really, that's very, very impressive.
There's 118 different speakers too at the meeting. There's obviously the class size is unlimited because it's virtual, so it's a great place to get your CE. This year's a CE year for us. You've got and there'll be different modules. I think as we move on, there'll be one for CPR. I think there's one for opioid abuse. There'll be one for child abuse, sexual abuse in the office for HR. So as we get older, it's not just your recertification of your license. There'll be all those different modules that you'll need to take: OSHA, HIPAA, each of those will get stacked on top of each other. And Midwinter is a great place to receive all your continuing education.
So is it going to be a lot on coronavirus too? How many speakers did you say you have?
118.
118 speakers. Is that going to be a big theme of this year?
Not really. I mean, for some of them, it will be. Some of the nutritionists, some of the
118, you said? 118?
118 different
Okay.
speakers, yes.
Okay.
And there'll be different topics. Some of them may talk entirely on the virus, but mostly, some of them may touch upon it depending on what it is. If it's a clinical item, they might recommend the best way to do it in a room with somebody who's had the virus. But we're not focusing on the virus specifically for the meeting because it's been almost a year. So all the information is out. There's other places to get it. But yes, we will be having some of the speakers will be focusing primarily on the virus and other forms of health and so forth for dentists.
And how much is the meeting?
It's $119, which gives you a full access pass to go everywhere and to see the speakers that you need to see.
Very good. My gosh, I love the JPEG you made. It looks adorable. It says every meeting from now on will have some virtual component. A conversation with Chicago Dental Society President Dino Nicholas. My gosh. Any relation to St. Nicholas? I assume so.
Sometimes, yes. That's my wife says that all the time.
So, I mean, my gosh, so many things I want to talk about. They come out of school, and the only reason she went to dental school is because her mom's a dentist, and she wants to go join her mom, and now it's very, very stressful because now mom's like, I'm not busy enough for you, and her whole thing was to go be a dentist and join her mom. And then, so you got that brokenhearted that mom's not going to let me come back and join her, all the way to the other side of the spectrum that she goes and works for her dad, the love of her life. But he's not a good dentist. And I've had, I mean, there's been some really tough scenarios there. I know of a dentist who didn't talk to his dad for 10 years after a 3 or 4 month or 6 month associateship. He was so outraged by the quality, ethics, moral, whatever. They didn't talk for a decade. What advice would you give joining a practice with Dr. Oldgrad?
It's funny about even the parent situation. I've had experience with that where even my own contemporaries have gone in, and it's not that dad's not a good guy or he's not busy, but and this, Howard, from talking to people, sometimes people's best quality is also their worst. So the father's stubborn. He doesn't, his only technology in the office is a fax machine. Okay, that's it. And they don't want to get digital x-rays. They want nothing. They don't want a scanner. They want no other technology. And it becomes extremely frustrating then for Dr. Newgrad to work with his father. So I've seen that. I've also had a very dear friend of mine who his father was one of my mentors. And his dad said, you go work somewhere else for a year or two, then you can come in here and buy the practice. And he did it. He's doing great. And I think that was a terrific lesson that his father gave him was, listen, you're not going to learn anything by coming here right out of school. Go work somewhere for a year or two, learn about insurance and everything else that goes along, the business part of the office and anything clinically, and then come here and work with me. And that situation worked out extremely well. Wow. I also tell the students too, Howard, like you probably did, when you're in school, call up everybody in the area and say, hey, I'm a student at Midwestern. Can I come by on Saturday? Can I shadow you for an hour? Can I see how you work? Can I ask you questions? My wife also works with me. So the other half is we want to talk to me, but they also want to talk to her about insurance and staff and everything else that goes into having an office.
So you did something that everyone warns everyone not to do, and you're never supposed to do it, and you did it, and you worked with your wife in a dental office. Did she ever send you to the hospital? Did you ever, any broken bones, anything you want to share, the trauma you learned?
I would love to share. For the first one is that she had been working there. Now, she had no previous dental knowledge at all, which helped tremendously. Okay, she gave me a different perspective on the office. About 2 months in, we got into an argument. I threw the keys at her. I said, leave. She left. About an hour later, I realized that we drove together that day and she was gone. So I had to wait till about 5 or 6 o'clock until she cooled down. I think she bought a few pairs of shoes and then she came back. So that was the last time that I had fired her. The other reason that it works is she does not come in the room into the operatory, okay, or into the garage. She's not allowed in certain areas. Not because I won't let her, but that nauseates her. She gets very violent. The sight of saliva makes her nauseous. So she doesn't come near the op. I don't ask questions at the front desk, and it works out really well. I got to tell you a story. So we built out this office in 2006, and there was a gentleman here. We'll call him Lester because his name was Lester. So he did all the Corian countertops. So at about 8 o'clock at night, he says to me, "This tooth is killing me. Can you get this thing out of here?" I said, "I can do it, Lester." I said, but Celeste is going to have to help us. So I told Celeste, I said, "Listen, I need your hand with Lester." "Well, I don't want to look." I go, "You don't have to do anything. Just hold Mr. Thirsty. I just need you to be in the room with me." So it was number 12, 13, upper left. So I tell Lester, I said, "Lester, lean towards me." I give him the injection. I put the needle down. I turn, for a third of a second, I come back and he's sitting forward. He says, "I hear something funny." The saliva ejector's in his ear, okay? She's looking up at the TV screaming, "This is disgusting. This is gross. I'm going to vomit." And, I didn't know who to talk to first. So I had to remove the saliva ejector from his ear. And then I had to remove Celeste from the operatory because she wasn't saying nice things to the guy while he was sitting there. So that was the one and only time she assisted me.
That is awesome. Awesome.
I'm going to back up one more time.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and I don't know if you're hearing this on Dental Town, but the spouses, whether it's male or female, of the dentists now who work in accounting or do other things are asking me, my wife, because Celeste and I would go to the dental functions at the school, the social functions, and the husbands would come up to me and say, my wife's in school and I do accounting and I'm in HR. At what point do I quit my job and work at the office? So, that's a big thing that people are asking now is my spouse is graduating from dental school. I do the accounting and human resources, and I have experience with staff. At what point can I join the dentist part of the family and become an active part of the office?
That's very, very good. What's really weird when you eat dinner with dentists versus physicians or physicians never talk about technology. You never go to dinner with a physician. He says, "I just bought this high-tech, whatever, MRI, whatever machine." Dentists just seem to be just head over heels in love with technology. And when you're coming out of school $400,000 in debt, this stuff gets pricey. If you decide you're going to chairside mill, that's $135. You want a CBCT, that could be $100. My gosh, you want to do Lanap lasers with Millennium Dental Technology, there's another $130,000. These kids can literally come out of school and make 3 purchases and they've doubled their debt. Why is what do you think of the infatuation with technology in dentistry? And what advice would you give on these expensive things?
I think the infatuation comes with the fact that it's actually available and the fact that now it's more useful. I think technology in dentistry has caught up. For us, it was a thrill not using a belt-driven handpiece, and then it was the advent of the fiber optic and things that they kept putting in there that were maybe a little bit behind. And now, you have lasers, like you said, you have CEREX, you have digital components that not only make things easier, but better for the patient. The work comes out better. The computer doesn't lie. Of course, neither does the scale and your best friend. But having that technology now make dentistry not just easier for the dentist, but for the patient, and it makes the work better. I just think that's the world we're living in. 50 years ago, it was a different story, but now the technology is there. As far as the price goes, I think that's why multiple grads would be getting together and say, "Listen, let's go to Dr. Dino's office. He's got 6 chairs. There's 6 of us. We can rotate now that you're not hopping from room to room. We can set this up and we can each use the technology and share the cost of that." Because who can be expected, like you said, you add up what I paid in undergrad, what dental school cost, and throw in a couple pieces of equipment and you're at $1 million. You haven't seen a patient yet.
Right. And I've heard you talk before about business insurance, the flood in 2002, what they didn't cover. What did you talk about your journey with business insurance and the flood of 2002?
Yeah, we had an incident. I had worked with Dr. Olgrad in the first office, and then he subsequently retired. Celeste and I moved across the street into what was a pharmacy because they had all gone the way of CDS. We expanded from 1,000 square feet to 3,000. We built it out. It was a beautiful thing. And a month later, it flooded with raw sewage. The insurance was, well, gee, this isn't covered, and just rinse it off and put it back in there. And I said, okay. I said, I'll do that. I said, but I need you to sign a waiver saying that if somebody gets sick or they're medically compromised, that you're responsible for that. Well, they're like, well, we can't do that. I go, well, then you see my problem. But the struggle took over 2 years, and it was a long time. And we finally settled on a number that was a lot less. So what I would tell the students was make sure you find out not only what you're covered for, but what they're not covering, so that you're aware of what you're going into when you do eventually buy an office or a practice or a building. You need to be aware of those things. You have to see the unforeseen. And I'm not talking about death or dismemberment. I'm talking about what happens if we have a flood? What happens if there's a fire? What happens if somebody drives their car through the office? Just like this pandemic, you can't make the plans for this now. You don't take CPR lessons, okay, a class while somebody's having a heart attack. So if you can be prepared for these things before they happen, I think it'll help well in your dental career.
The ADA released a deal this morning from it said dentists administering vaccines gaining acceptance in states. ADA supports recognizing dentists as COVID-19 vaccinators by issuing legislative guidance. And our Arizona Daniel Clementson, DDS, MD, oral surgeon, says, as part of its ongoing COVID-19 vaccine strategy, the ADA supports recognizing dentists as vaccine providers, said ADA President Daniel J. Clementson. Having dentists administer vaccines in their communities helps improve the public vaccination rate, and it relieves some of the burdens of current vaccine providers. Are you in your dental office, which was Dr. Dino's Dental Oasis, do you think you might be providing vaccines, and is supply and demand, is there a need for that in Chicago or not really?
I don't think in my particular office, I think in Chicago, in the suburbs, between all the public health facilities, Malcolm X College, there's places to go to receive the vaccine. I don't think it's necessarily to give that in the office. Having said that, I think just like the access to care issue, once you leave this area and go further south in the state, you might have to drive an hour and a half for endo, 2 hours for oral surgery. Your dentist may be the only provider medically or dentally that you would see. So in those instances, I think it's great if the dentist can provide the vaccine. Who gives more injections than we do?
I know, right?
And this is my personal opinion. I don't think, not that I'm not comfortable doing it, I don't think I need to do it in my own office. Okay. But like I said, outside the city and the city limits, you go further south, I think that's great. I think that's a terrific thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's just part of that whole process of where we need to get back to our roots, where the first president of the American Dental Association was a DDS-MD. The current president is a DDS-MD. We got to start giving flu shots. I mean, why are we seeing if grandma has a periodontal pocket when she doesn't come back in 6 months because she's one of 20, 30,000 people that died of the flu, and we could have given her a flu shot. It's just mindset. And I saw that on a missionary dentistry one time. One time we were on a missionary dentistry trip, and it's like 4 dentists, and we're just doing all these teeth, and I'm looking at these like really sick people. And I sit there and said, you know what? So I had I think I had 14 Benjamins. So I drove into town and looked for, went to the different pharmacies, found a physician and working in a pharmacy, and bought basically his whole inventory and went back and then watched him treat him all day. And so you just got to get out of your mindset that, that the body, the mouth is part of the body, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it seems obvious, but we get away from it. You talk about learning to work alone. Here's the DSO experience I've had in dental schools. 10 years ago, a lot of dental schools were mad that DSOs were getting popular, and DSOs were always going in to dental schools. And if you go into a dental school with 20 large pizzas, you're going to get a crowd every single time. They're broke and they love pizza. Everyone knows it. And the dental schools and the private dentists were like, well, these are the bad guys, and these are guys running dentistry. And everybody was kind of afraid of them, but wanted to hear more about it. Now it's full circle. You go in there and talk to dental students, they're like, yeah, well, I I don't see myself really doing clinical. My goal is 5 years out of school. I'd like to have 4 offices, and then eventually have, it's like, God, they've all gone from afraid of the DSO. Now they just want to own a large DSO. You talk about learning to work alone. That's where the most money is when you're a owner operator dentist and you do it all yourself. I think a lot of people get seduced that they're going to have associates do it all and they're going to make more money for free. But the bottom line, the people that are making the most money are always owner operators who work alone. Agree or disagree?
I agree. When I started in the Dr. Olgrad practice, I had to work by myself because he had one assistant that he used. It was a hygienist in the other room, and then it was myself. So I didn't have an assistant. I was used to working that way from Loyola. Now, because of the pandemic, patients are appreciative of the fact that there is nobody else. They don't come into contact with anybody. I've got the mask, the shield. The dentist now is at a greater risk dentally than the patient is. They don't see anybody at the front desk. Celeste is in the back. We handle the transactions, and that's it. I work by myself. We spread people out. If you minimize your specialties, endo and oral surgery, which I'm comfortable with. Some people do that. Some people don't. I never hop from room to room. I never said, okay, I'll be right back and give this guy an injection and then go see somebody, a woman for her denture, things like that. I was never comfortable that way because I didn't want to schedule 10 people at once, hoping that 3 would cancel. I always see one person at a time. I can concentrate on them. I can do all the work that they need at one time. And the patients really appreciate that.
I don't want to get you in too much trouble, but it is Dentistry Uncensored. Illinois is kind of a wild state. I mean, you had something like 3 out of your 4 last governors went to jail or something like that. And for a long time on Dental Town, a lot of dentists were talking about leaving Illinois because the government wasn't paying their bills. Some of these guys got literally $1 million owed to them by the state, and Illinois. It was strange politics, but they weren't paying their bills. And is that still a problem in Illinois?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I heard part of your discussion with Cheryl Watson Lowry, and that's part of what's going on in the state. People are leaving, or they're owning multiple practices. Some in Illinois, some in Indiana. They're close to the border, maybe Wisconsin. So they use sometimes bordering states to help. But you're absolutely right. There's definitely a problem in Illinois, and hopefully they can figure that out.
Do you think it's gonna get better, or
it's gotta get better? It has to. I'm hoping that it does, but as far as finances goes, who knows? It's up, it's down. I mean, every day is different.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to talk about these young kids is one of the things that concerns me. You're talking about the Chicago Midwinter Meeting 2021. It really seems weird to me that dentists, whenever they want to go learn something, they always go to the airport, fly across the country, drop $1,000 on a weekend course, stay in a resort, and it's like just on the drive to the airport, they passed 5 endodontists that would have gladly. You could have come in after work, pulled up a stool next to them. It's a mentor. When you fly all the way to Florida or the Dominican Republic to learn implants, and then you have an implant failure in Chicago, well, that guy in the Dominican Republic isn't going to help you. But that's why local study clubs, young students got to get out and run for mayor. You got to go press the flesh. You need a mentor, and you need a lot of them. You need a mentor in endo, a mentor in implants. But dentists are kind of scared. They're kind of shy. They're kind of introvert. And plus they think, well, why would an endodontist want to teach me molar endo that I'm taking food off his plate? What advice would you give of joining like local study clubs around Chicago, or finding mentors in different areas, things like that?
I was fortunate that when I was at the school, I would direct the students towards the oral surgeons, the endodontists that I had used or that I had known from school. If you want to learn how to give an injection, it's either oral surgery or endo. As much as we do, that's all they do. So if you want to see how to give an injection or how to take out a tooth, that's the way to go. Not that we couldn't do that, but you want to see the specialists in action. If you want to learn about surgery and all the other services that they can provide, they'll do more. They'll come up against more anomalies in a day than you will in a week. And the students that I had sent to those offices came back and said, wow, that was really, even in school, when we learned injections, it was my first or third week in the clinic was oral surgery. and somebody was there with a swab, and they pointed, and we gave the injections. By the end of the week, I was a professional, and that's the best way to learn. Like you said, local study clubs. Something happens, we get a call. This way somebody can come over, and that's what's nice about having people together and communicating is that hey, you've got 2 or 3 other people in the office. When I had first started with Dr. Olgrad, the advantage was he'd be like, "Come here, I want to show you something," and he would show me some a peg lateral or an obscure extraction or something like that. And it's nice to work with other people to get that bonding, to get that experience, and then you share the knowledge.
And when I think of the Chicago Midwinter meeting, one of the biggest highlights of it for me was always going to the gala benefiting Oral Health America. They did that for like 29 years on Soldiers Field, and that was just like it was like a who's who in dentistry. It was just so dang fun. But that's no longer.
Right.
So tell us what happened. In fact, if you go to their website, oralhealthamerica.org, you pull up authoritydental.org.
Right. So this year, I think, was the first year we didn't have that. 19 it was, but last year at 20, that did not happen in Midwinter. It was the first time in a long time.
So was that was that the American Tooth Fairy National Children's? Is that what that was called? America's toothfairy.org? Was that related to the Oral Health America? Or is that totally?
I don't know if they were or not. I just know that I don't know if they had disbanded, but this year they did not participate in Midwinter.
Wow. It took a pandemic, right?
Right.
That's what I'm hearing everybody say. It took a pandemic for me to change my behavior. My gosh.
How has it changed your life?
Well, I'll tell you what. I lectured 32 to 64 times a year since August 4th, 1990 at the Sheraton Manhattan, and I loved it. I mean, I got to see 50 different countries, meet so many friends, loved it, but I'm turning 59 this year, and I've been saying for 10 years, I'm going to get off the road, and then we started doing this podcast 4 years ago, and that was much bigger than practicing or going to lecture. I mean, think of lecturing in New Delhi, 5-hour flight, Phoenix, New York, 2-hour layover, 15-hour flight to New Delhi, get up, lecture 8 hours to a couple hundred people, and then backtrack all the way home. So 4 days of whatever for a couple hundred people. And then when the pandemic hit, I already had this going, and I just said, it's all virtual now. I'm too damn old for this. And it's embarrassing making excuses to my grandchildren. I mean, I'm not, it's hard to keep telling the kids, well, I'm busy tomorrow or maybe next week. And I think I'm an old dog, and it's time to slow down. I really do.
It's funny because somebody had, just like 20 years ago, there was a big discussion about, hygienists giving injections. And, just because it's a rule or a law doesn't mean you have to do it in your office. Like those that are opposed to teledentistry, I'm like, you've been doing teledentistry ever since my sister-in-law sent me a picture of one of the kids' teeth on the lower anteriors that were labeled to the baby teeth. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do it, you don't even realize you've been doing it.
Well, I'm going to switch gears to another subject, and that is specialties. A lot of kids are correctly analyzing that. Let me just tell you some facts that are hard to get your mind around. But when we look at the average net income for a dentist, the average net income for a dental specialist is $320,000. General practitioners $197,000. If a dentist owns their own practice, it's $244,000, and a dentist employees $147,000. We used to have 8 specialties when we got out of school, and now they've added 4 more. When you look at the fact that in the year 1900 there were no specialists, by 2000 physicians had 58, we had 8. Now it's just 2020, and we're already up to 12. It's all specializing, and I just can't see us going back to a world where, like when you and I graduated, where you could pretty much do all the procedures. But due to the pandemic, does that kind of add extra reasons that maybe now, if you're in dental kindergarten school, stay in there and specialize in oral surgery, endo, perio, pediatric dentistry, ortho, prosthodontics, dental anesthesiology, oral facial pain, oral med, oral path, oral radiology, or dental public health?
It may. But in addition to your numbers of what you're spending on school, you have to add the 2 to 3 to 4 years that you're not out making money. It's not going to be at the numbers you had mentioned at 147 or 197 or whatever, but it's 30 to 50 to 60,000 a year times 3 or 4 that you're also not producing. So not only are you spending on your education and waiting for this to clear up, but you're also not making even, let's say, minimum wage dentally somewhere. So that has to get figured into the equation. I used to come back home from dental school and we'd go to church and they, oh, why don't you should be an orthodontist and you should be an oral surgeon and you should be. And I said, it's not just 4 more years of school. It's 4 years that I'm not working. And that's something that needs to be taken into consideration. But as far as waiting for this to clear, if I was in school, and I would seriously give it some thought and think, hey, maybe if I wait out 2 more years and go to ortho, maybe this would be it. Maybe I go to the Army for a couple of years. With my last graduating class that I was at for Midwestern, 13 of the 130 were in some form of the service. So they donated their time. But then what happened was the National Guard or the Army, the Marines, whoever it was, also picked up half of their tuition. So instead of having 400,000, now you had 200,000 of debt, which was a little bit more manageable over 20 years than the big nut that big payment was.
I want to ask another thing about dental societies. Young kids in dental school, they can understand that the endodontist wants to do the molar root canals. So why would he want to teach me to do all the molar root canals, and compete there? That's called channel conflict, and channel conflict is in every industry. The CDA, the California Dental Association, they started a TDSC dental supplies, and it's powered by Henry Schein. Other people that look at dental meetings think, well, gosh, if you're the CDA and you're having a meeting and you're now selling supplies with Henry Schein, well, why would Patterson and Benco and Burkhart want to go have a booth there and things like that? I see dental associations like the ADA. Now they're getting into dental transitions. They're selling practices. They're going into a lot of businesses that already exist out there, and that creates channel conflict. I mean, if I was a practice broker, why would I want to have a booth at the ADA meeting when I'm competing against their own dental transition deal? But how do you wrap your amazing strategic mind around the channel conflict with all these different people in dentistry?
It's like you mentioned in the beginning that, dentistry and medicine were separate or together, and then they kind of fanned off, and now it's starting to come back together again. That's starting to overlap as well. A lot of it happened through necessity of the pandemic. We were asked to give up all our PPE, and then 3 months later, we're like, well, we can't practice dentistry. I gave away all my gloves and my masks and gowns and everything. So in order to help or to expedite, I think some of the dental societies and groups got involved with at least trying to get us the basics to get back to work. I don't know if I'm comfortable with them continuing to do that afterwards, but until this clears up, I think you're going to see some overlap of societies trying to help expedite things through sales of dental supplies.
Yeah, I just remember what it was. It was the TDSC stands for the Dentist Supply Company, and but you've seen it, and the other thing that's one of the fun things about getting old is you've seen every rodeo before, so you start recognizing patterns. Like when I got out of school, this tells you how Irish I am. I noticed that, when I got out of school, there were so many different beer brands and different types of beers and bars and all that. And then it all consolidated to basically Budweiser, Coors, Miller, just like the big three. And then as soon as it all consolidated, the next idea is to break it all up and unconsolidate it. So I've gone through the whole wave, and the same thing happened in dental supplies. When I got out of school in '87, every single halfway decent-sized city had its own dental supply company and a rep and all that. Then guys like Pete Frechette, Patterson went and got a big line of credit and starts doing a roll-up where he just got money, started buying all these companies. And it's really easy to do because if most companies want to sell like 6 to 8 times earnings. So say you're a dental supply company and you make $1 profit a year. Well, they would buy you for say $8, 8 years in advance. But the minute he booked that dollar earnings on NASDAQ, if his stock is trading at a multiple of say 15 times price earnings, he buys you for 8 times earnings and he instantly shows 15 times earnings. So it all rolled up and into Patterson, Schein, Benco, Burkhart. And now it's all deconsolidating again. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a new dental supply company or something, and even dental societies getting into it. Do you think a lot of the dental societies will all get into it? I mean, do you think it'll take off, like everyone will have that?
I mean, they could. For me, it was similar to the airlines. It used to be just American and United, and then there was a few smaller ones, and then they would gobble them up and then break apart. I think the same thing happened in dental supply. You had Patterson, Sullivan, Shine, Benko, the big three or four, and then they would start to gobble up the other ones, and then dentists got upset because, hey, listen, I want a local guy. I want a guy or a girl who's going to come to the office and sell to me, and then they would distribute a few more. You could have your option. So, but as far as society selling that, I don't know if that's going to be a long-term thing. Your guess is as good as mine, but I always equate it to the airlines, where there's always two or three big ones, and then there's going to always have to be some little fish on the fin of the shark feeding off of what's left over.
My gosh. And then I also wanted to ask you, back to channel conflict. Another channel conflict question is, you're the ADA. I mean, again, you should be the executive director. Nobody understands Chicago, all the leaders. I mean, it's a no-brainer. My gosh, it's so obvious because there's so many nuances in dentistry that people just don't get. I mean, I've been in dentistry 32 years, and every day it's still blowing my mind. But one of your channel conflicts is our competition is the Academy of General Dentistry. How do you view the Academy of General Dentistry? Do you look at them just like the dentists across the street kind of compete? Do you look at them as we're all on the same team? But how do you wrap your mind around the Academy of General Dentist?
I know when I had gotten out of school that it was more of a conflict. It was an issue, but now everybody seems to get along with everybody, and there is no. I have no issue with the AGD. I think they do terrific work. They do a lot of continuing education and provide classes. So I think if you can get something from them that you're not getting from the ADA, obviously the ADA is my first choice. But competition is good. It keeps everybody sharp. Coke and Pepsi spend the most on advertising than anybody does. Do they need to? Probably not, but they do that to keep each other sharp.
And a very interesting thing about how things start and never change. Like Coke came on the scene before Pepsi. I think it was only like 11 years before, and Pepsi's never overtaken it. You take Harvard. It's the first school in America. It still has the biggest name brand, the biggest endowment. Kleenex. I mean, like right now, I look at my box of tissues and, oh my God, it actually says Kleenex. I can't believe I actually am buying the name brand. But first mover advantage is huge, and it's still why Dental Town's a thing. I mean, when we came out in 2004 and 1999, Facebook came out 5 years later, but we already had 100,000 dentists, and that first mover advantage, it's still going strong 20 years later. So first mover advantage is huge. But I can't believe we went over an hour, and I know that you're the busiest man in dentistry, all the things you're on. I don't want to take any more time, but I do have one wish for you. Well, I have two wishes for you. You got to be the executive director. I mean, you just have to. I mean, again, nobody would be better suited to this than you. But you got two kingpins in Chicago. You got the ADA and you got Delta. And my buddy Marco Vucic, PhD, when I podcasted him, I said, dentists on Dental Town have been having debates for 20 years of what lasts longer, MOD composite or amalgam, or all these questions that they ask. And I just sit there and think, well, we should be able to know the answer. There's billions of claims filed all the way since the 1950s. And I said, Marco, why don't you just go down the street to Delta and run a couple of algorithms? And he said, what's the 400-pound elephant in the room? That Delta and dentists, I mean, they're natural predators. I mean, one's predator and prey. The dentist wants, crowns covered at $1 million with no second opinion, and the patient wants it for free, and the insurance companies all got to compete with Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they're natural competitors, and that's not going to go away. But obviously they're natural competitors. But you would think under science that they could work together. I wish you could. They got a new president of Delta, Wells. He's a new guy. He's fresh blood, new great guy. You're the most lovable, adorable guy. Vucicek, who could not love Marco? I mean, but if those three got together and just gave him access to the claims or whatever, we could answer so many questions like how long does the average root canal last? How long does it last if an endodontist does it versus a general dentist? I mean, the questions are unlimited. The answer's there. You just can't get these two big heads in the same room to get along. Why can't we just all get along?
I think that before that was an issue, but now because of what's happened in the world, I think what is going to come about because of this is that we're going to start to collaborate now with insurance companies, with physicians, with everybody else to bring all the science together and to try to get this thing on track and where it should be. We're trying to get everybody together. You know,
Yeah.
the ADA did some terrific things. They boosted their membership by putting out the toolkit and helping to guide people. But you're right. You know, access to that information would be critical. You know, some people might say, well, you're giving them the ammunition they need. That every time Howard does a crown, he does a buildup. Okay. So, you know, I see both sides of it, but now because of what's happened in the last year, I think sharing of the science and everybody doing things together is going to help tremendously.
Well, Dino, I'm so glad that you're the president of Chicago Dental Society during this very challenging year. And thank you for all that you always do for dentistry, have always done for dentistry. And it was just good luck on your meeting. And thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show today.
I want to thank you, Howard, personally from the bottom of my heart. Of course, you know, the theme is Heart of Dentistry, which has a magnitude of a meaning now more than it did 2 or 3 years ago when Celeste and I came up with it. But I just want to tell you that we also appreciate what you do for dentistry and for the younger people. I consider you and I now, we're in the full over partial crowd, but what you do for students and for recent grads is now what my life's mission is. I never felt better than when I was teaching and I started thinking about my mentors and the great instructors that I had. And that's what motivated me to go back. You know, I remember the teachers that we had, Al Klaczynski and people like that were just Pete Hasiakos, people that just were great and saw the struggles you were going through. And that's what I tell my colleagues. Listen, mentoring doesn't mean you're sitting down with this person. You might just need to make a phone call during midterms and finals and say, hey, listen, I know what you're going through. The exam might be different, but it's the same stress, the same trauma. We're here for you as a profession, and a society, and we want to do whatever we can. So I want to thank you, Howard, for everything you've done, not only for the profession, but for me personally. Thank you.
All right, Dino, we should start a mutual admiration club, and we'll be the only two members,
Yep.
and we'll just admire each other each day. Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. Have a great day.
Thanks, Howard. You too.